Live from Studio 550, this is The McGraw Show on KTRS.
He's on the show so much we might as well call him a frequent co-host to the show. He's Senator Roy Blunt. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Good morning, Senator.
Hey, good morning, McGraw. How are you this morning?
We're doing okay. Let's get right to it. Chuck Hagel, Defense Secretary, announced that he wants to cut the Army to the smallest size in 74 years. What are your thoughts as you hear that?
Well, I think we need to look real closely at his proposals. The ones that cut the National Guard concern me a lot. Eliminating the A-10 fighter plane concerns me a lot, but there's a lot on the table here. I'm on both the Defense Authorizing Committee with Senator McCaskill, and I both serve on that committee, and then I'm on the Defense Appropriating Committee. So I intend to be very involved in that discussion, and those facts all came out yesterday. I sent a letter last week on downsizing the National Guard and the Reserve, which is another component here. If you're going to downsize the regular force, you really need to be sure that you have an integrated armed force, that when you do need more people, they're readily able to come back. And so this has to be looked at very carefully. It's a big issue in our state. We have literally thousands of people serving in the military and thousands more supporting the military. And so this is going to be a big discussion, and it's an important discussion.
Recently the 60 Minutes had the story about the Joint Strike Fighter and the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been wasted with that. If we did away with the Joint Strike Fighter, couldn't we afford all this other stuff?
Well, actually, they've sort of doubled down on the Joint Strike Fighter, and, we put some F-18s for the Navy that would be made in the Washington's bill. The Navy's decided not to ask for those at all, even though part of the proposal was it would be an additional 2 years before the Navy got their shot at the new plane, the Joint Strike Fighter, which is a whole lot more cost per plane than the F-18s, the Growlers, the Super Hornets, the planes that are built in St. Louis that have served the Navy so well. So I do think you've got to look at this thought process and say, what are you thinking here in the way you're spending money? What are the places you've decided to double down on more expensive equipment? And let's be absolutely sure that that equipment, one, is going to get there, and two, is a substantial improvement over the planes and other equipment that our fighting men and women currently have.
Senator Blunt, while we still have you, what's this story Attorney General Eric Holder said about curbing the bans on gay marriage? What's he trying to do here?
Is this the one, McGraw, where he said that state attorneys general don't have to enforce the it's an interesting position for the attorney general to take. He's been pretty aggressive in deciding not to enforce the law, and now advising state attorneys general who actually take an oath to enforce the law is a step way beyond where anybody should be. I think it's the job of the attorney general to enforce the law. The attorney general doesn't even have to, the state attorney general, in my view, doesn't even have to agree with the law. He just has to agree that the law was lawfully passed by the General Assembly and whatever governor signed the bill. And then he or she is supposed to, in our case he or she is supposed to enforce the laws of the state. And Eric Holder and the president deciding they're above the law is one thing, but for them then to advise 50 state elected officials that they also can decide which laws are appropriate and which laws aren't is very bad advice. And I suspect every attorney general in the next 24 to 48 hours will be asked if they're going to enforce the laws of their state or not. And I would think the only legitimate answer is yes, we're going to enforce the laws of our state until the state changes them.
We are in a little bit of an interesting place because there's a soldier in Fort Leonard Wood who's stationed there who wants to marry a same-sex marriage and is allowed by the military to marry, must go out of the state to find a state where they're allowed to be married by a same-sex partner, and then they have to move back into the state, and yet they're not recognized by the state in which they live in, and yet they defend this country. We're in a weird time with this gay marriage, are we not?
Well, I think that anytime the federal government injects itself into these issues, it creates problems. The divorce laws, marriage laws, adoption laws have traditionally been left to the states. If the federal government was solving all the other problems, then maybe they'd have some argument that, hey, we've done such a great job in Washington, D.C., that we should start doing the work of state capitals. But these laws have been left to the state. I think they're better left to the state. And in fact, the Defense of Marriage Act, which I supported and which Eric Holder decided as Attorney General and the President decided they wouldn't enforce, basically said what the Defense of Marriage Act said was, we're going to leave it to states to decide what the family law in their state is all about, rather than letting other states decide for them, or the federal government force states to do things they want to do. You know, Missouri voters have voted on this issue in recent years, and my belief is if they voted on it again, they'd have the same result, that they believe that the current marriage law in our state should continue to be the marriage law.
Senator Blunt, why we still have you, there's a television show on Netflix called House of Cards, where Kevin Spacey is or was portraying the House Majority Whip. He has since in the series gone on to become vice president. Are you watching this House of Cards at all?
Well, you know, I was the House Majority Whip for quite a while, and I watched the first 2 episodes, and then I decided that it was way beyond any reality that I was aware of, and I haven't followed it since then.
All right, so you are on the record as saying House of Cards is not based on reality.
House of Cards is not based on reality, and by the way, it's one of the most avidly watched shows in China, because actually the Chinese government says it's another example of just how corrupt the American political system is. So, you know, trying to have these things that make our system look different than it is may be entertaining, but probably not helpful as other people try to figure out what it is that makes our government special, and it's not the House of Cards.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the former House Majority Speaker, Senator Roy Blunt, now Senator of the great state of Missouri. Senator, thanks for checking in, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Okay, hold on to my mail. I'll be by soon.
Good. Senator Blunt, 745 here, Big 550 KTRS.